Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's well today. Welcome to Wednesday at 1. If you're brand spanking new, I'm Paul Turner from thediscipleproject.net. And, excuse me, we are going to be talking about a new way, I say new way of making disciples. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk a lot about my new book, which is called The Discipleship Project, and Stop the Meeting, Start the Movement, and Raise Up a Generation of New Doers. So that's what today is going to be about. We're going to talk about that. Stop the meeting, start the movement, and raise up a new generation of doers. Because I'll give you the kind of the backstory of how this was written. It started back probably 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, when I just became like super duper frustrated with youth ministry in general. And I was frustrated to the point of where discipleship, making disciples was kind of my big, I don't know what, my big hurdle, if you will, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make disciples. I didn't want to just have meetings. And yet the thing that was causing me the most frustration was the meetings. I had to have a bigger meeting, a better meeting, trying to get kids down at the altar, all this kind of stuff. And the pressure really just kind of built up over time in regards to having to try to produce a better meeting. And I just sat there for a second and just kind of said, I got to do something different. Otherwise, I'm going to be, in trouble just from a spiritual place, from an emotional place. And I just sat there and said, you know what? I just got to do things different. I can't preach it any better. I can't, use illustrations. And I mean, look, I'd done everything up to that point. I had just done everything I knew how to do. And I said, you know what? It's possible that the meeting is getting in the way of making disciples. And so with that being thought rushing into my head, I thought, well, how do I get rid of the meeting then short term? By the way, I'm not against meetings. I just want to point this out. The short term deal is that we would get rid of our meetings for a short amount of time so that we could focus on what I believed was the main thrust of discipleship, which was actually doing the gospel and not just hearing the gospel. That when you're talking to church kids who have been raised in it, all those stuff, that there's a percentage of them who don't do it. They understand it, they believe it, but it's not about what you believe, it's what you practice. And what I wanted to do, at least on the main gathering of our Wednesday night, is I wanted to put more into doing and less into me trying to create a meeting to make people happy. I would rather just go do Jesus stuff. And that's kind of where this came about, right? Because I said, well, how am I going to put this together then? And let me just show you. By the way, this is just kind of an overview, and then I'm going to answer some of your questions on discipleship and things like that. If you have questions about anything that I'm saying, I would love for you to chime in, leave some comments down below. And in doing this, I'm not going to have, like I said, I'm not going to go into the entire book. I'm just going to go kind of a basic overview so you kind of understand what it's about. Because it's also a manual. It's ideology, philosophy, theology, and practicalities of making disciples in youth ministry. And for me, we're going to do for a broader sense of this, we're going to do a webinar, okay? So a webinar is going to be a lot longer, and it's going to go through the whole process. It's going to go through the whole process of what it is to do, what does it mean to do a disciple project, and what does that mean for your youth ministry, and how can you do this? And then in the webinar, we'll cover all that, the practicalities. There'll be some goodies, some resources, all that kind of good stuff. And if you're not signed up, by the way, on the newsletter, the Youth Ministry Roundup, you can go to thediscipleproject.net and sign up there under resources. You sign up, and then you're going to know when the webinar is going to happen. It's going to happen in July, most likely. So if you want to be a part of the webinar, you can do that. And you just need to sign up and be on the newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter yet, go ahead and sign up on the newsletter now. And then also you're going to get, if you sign up on the newsletter, you're going to get a chapter, free chapter, chapter number 1 which is called the discipleship. Like I just pinpoint a few things in there that is at the crux of why we don't do some of the things we're supposed to do. Because, there's various reasons, that not every church, not every, I'm going to say something dangerous here, but I don't think every church needs a youth ministry as much as it needs to do youth ministry, right? So, I mean, we got churches that are trying to have a youth group so they can be sustainable in the community to build, folks and get people in. I understand that completely. But I think more churches need to practice youth ministry, not necessarily create a youth group. So in trying that, though, we're trying to be just like the church down the street because they have all the amenities, they have all those things. And I think churches that do youth ministry over trying to create a youth group or youth program out of whatever they may have, may be working against the goals of actually making disciples. And so, that's just kind of my reasoning behind that, because I know there's so many obstacles of trying to make disciples. There's politics, there's programming issues, there's leadership issues, there's all kinds of things. There's lack of agreement on things. And what I do in the book is I try to, because it's progressive. The book is progressive. It goes from philosophy, right? The problem, why we have this happening. And then we break down some of the chapters, I'll tell you, are, you get about a dozen chapters in here. We go through the disciple dilemma. Do we need a youth ministry? Not another youth program. Uncommon principles to installing a discipleship program. Establishing your identity, youth group or youth church. All this is going to be covered in the upcoming webinar, by the way. The missing piece, a disciple's core values, preparing for change from meeting to movement, anatomy of a D project, what does that mean? The outreach schedule, and then a debriefing. And then there's resources, discussion sheets, and over 100 ideas to make the D project happen. So this is progressive from, I state the problem, some of the issues that I had with it within our youth ministry, and then I say, okay, here's how you go from having a meeting every week to breaking down and saying, we're going to go do Jesus stuff, because I'm preaching to you, teenagers, in hopes that you will then go live that life. And in reality, what they don't have is models. They don't know, they don't have the opportunities I want to say this, they don't have the structure maybe to do some of the things we can do as a youth ministry, where you have a bunch of people in the youth ministry who can join you in this, right? When you're doing it, you're usually doing it by yourself. Whereas when you're doing it as a youth group, obviously there's greater confidence. There's, you're willing to make more mistakes maybe because you're in a group and not by yourself. And so what we tried to do is we structured things as, look, by the way, this is broken down, and you can do this as a weekend, a retreat, or as a 1 month deal, or even as a shift, where you can shift programming for 3 months and do that, because that's what we did. We did it for 3 months. We took 12 Wednesdays. Spring and summer is the best time to do it because daylight stays out longer. And so when kids show up, what we did is we basically said, hey, listen, we're going to sing a song, say a prayer, and then we're going to go do Jesus stuff. Now, lots of prep work. There's probably about 6 months worth of prep work before we ever got to that place. And so in doing that, I had to prepare the pastor and the parents and the students and the adult leaders and all that stuff. And that's all in the book. I share how I did that and worked through the process with this. But what the book also does is it challenges your perceptions of the actual book, of the actual book, of your thoughts and ideas on discipleship. Because if our ideas are broken, then we see maybe as discipleship as a series of classes, or it's academic, or it's just spiritual disciplines, and listen, all those are super important to the walk of Christ. I make no aspersions towards that. But what I see is that from the time a young person gets saved, we and this is true of me. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I point the fingers at myself. That what we would try to do is we'd say, okay, we see a raised hand and we prayed a prayer, and then we let everybody off the hook as if, okay, well, you prayed a prayer and now we're done. rather than create accountability that says, now that you're saved. And what I saw in scripture was I saw people getting saved, people coming to know Christ, and immediately then start to follow, right? They just started to follow Jesus. And we create those opportunities because the length of time between a student says, I want to follow Jesus, and the time they have, the time till they actually do the things that Jesus said is really far. It's from the moment they accept Christ. The goal of the disciple project is to get kids moving into the things that they're supposed to be doing. Because if they don't, they're going to see it as just a moment in time where they say, well, I prayed my prayer, I raised my hand, I did my thing, I signed my card, I walked the altar, I did all these things. But there's a serious lack of connection between I prayed a prayer and I follow Jesus. And I'm not doubting anybody's relationship with God. I don't do any of that stuff. But what I do see is if I close the gap between commitment and then going and doing, I think that what that does is that creates more of the mission, right? That creates, it says, listen, I didn't get saved just to go through academia. I didn't get saved just to go through classes. I didn't get saved to memorize scripture. I didn't get saved. I got saved because God wanted me on his mission with him to love other people and care for other people. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to create space on that Wednesday night to get that student from the point where they receive Christ to then moving into their gifts and callings and the things that they're supposed to be doing. Because nobody remembers a meeting, right? I don't know if you remember any meetings from your time in youth group, right? So, well, that was an amazing meeting. Maybe there was. But what I'm trying to do is that during a 4-year course of a student's life, I want them to remember those 3 months out of a year that says, and that's not the only time I want you doing Jesus stuff, but that's the time when we do it together. That's the time when you remember that we would go out and feed the homeless, because that's what we would do. We would go out from our church and we'd have kids ministering to the shut-ins in our church, praying for people, working on special projects, going down to the parking lot and handing out pizza to kids in the parking lot who are hanging out there who aren't coming. They do visitation with students who hadn't been in a while. They would go and visit new students. There was a lot of things that could be done on that Wednesday night. It's 1 hour or however long your time is. So we met for probably, I want to say, hour and a half at the time. And so we used that little bit of time and we said, okay, we're going to go ahead and pray. We're going to sing a song. And then we're going to go out and do for about 45 minutes to an hour, because everything then was quick. It was within distance of the church, all those kind of things. And so it became good for us to be able to do that, because what would happen then is people would come back in and kids would have a moment then at the end to share some of their experiences they had. And it was so important because what I read in when Jesus sent out the 70, they came back and brought back reports that that the power of God had moved through them, and that they saw sick people healed, they saw demons cast out, they saw the work of God being done, and they had testimonies. Well, when was the last time you had a student come in and say, here's this testimony of what God did? Right now, sometimes you hear blank stares and people going, anybody got a testimony? Well, that word has become almost irrelevant in the church today, because people aren't being doers of the word, they're being hearers only. And what the Disciple Project does is it gets people back to doing so that they have something to share, because they're watching God and sensing God moving through their life. They're watching God move out here, but they're also feeling and sensing God moving in them. And that's the whole deal. Now, I'm ready now. That's kind of the big, broad, open story there. If you have questions, now would be a great time for you to jump in and ask some questions. If you have questions about discipleship, if you have questions about the book, if you have questions about any of those things, because I'm going to step away for just a second here and grab my power cord. For whatever reason, I didn't put it in. So think about your questions for just a second. I'm going to grab my power cord. I'm right here. I'm not going too far away. I have my hand here, so don't think this is a blank screen. There we go. I'm right here. I know you were scared. You were nervous that I was leaving you, but I'm not leaving you. Okay? I am not leaving you. I would not leave you like that. So do you have any questions? And if you do, well, of course it's not in here. Where'd my cord go? It's a good question. Well, it's okay. I don't absolutely need that, but if you have a question, go ahead and ask your question now, and then I won't worry about my cord now because it's more than likely it's upstairs probably, but I don't want to leave you for that long. By the way, this book is available right now, and there'll be a link down in the description below, but it is gumroad.com/youthmenresources. That's gumroad.com/youthmenresources. You can pick it up there and look for it over there, as well as other resources that I have available for youth pastors, youth ministries, that kind of good stuff. And so, like I said, it's only about $20, $19.99, and it, like I said, you're going to get questions, you're going to get forms, you're going to get all kinds of good stuff. It's all downloadable, and it's there for you to use. So, but if you have questions, even if you're watching this later on and you have questions, you can go ahead and leave those down below, and I'll get back to you on those. But if you have any questions in particular, I do these Wednesdays at 1 to kind of address some of your things as well. It's not just about my stuff. I do these Wednesdays at 1 so that you can ask questions. Maybe you have an issue going on in your youth ministry, or you have something going on tonight that you need to resolve. When do we not have something to resolve sometimes, right? So if you have any of those questions, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions as well. So let those kind of pop up here. Type in your question, and I'll be happy to answer them. Other things going on. I have about 3. I have 3 youth meetings left until I am no longer officially a youth pastor. The 11th is my last day, I believe 11th of July. And so I will have a lot of free time. Well, I hope I don't have a lot of free time. I'm not going to say that. I hope I have just enough free time to spend it with you guys, answering questions on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock, as well as doing some other things. So any questions about the book, any questions about discipleship, any questions about your youth ministry, about anything that I might be able to answer, because this time is your time. I want to be conscious of that. And if you have no questions, then I will simply let you guys go and do your business, let you do your thing. But if you have questions, I want to be able to do that, and hopefully add some value to your youth ministry, not just talk about my stuff. My stuff is there, and I'm excited about it, and I'd like you guys to be excited about it. But for Wednesday nights, currently visiting assistant home, but would like to add some things. John, do you do that on Wednesday nights? Is that a Wednesday night thing? Because in addition to that, when we did it for this, we looked at, like I said, we looked at the church. We looked at what the church needed. How does the youth group then get activated to help and assist with what maybe the church is focused on, right? So we had shut-ins at that time. We had a kind of an older congregation, but we had shut-ins. We had people that we went and visited, other service projects. A lot of this was not about service projects for us. I mean, we did some of those because service projects are kind of, they require a lot more time. Now, something you can do in-house, when you break, because this says you're going to break up into what's called action teams. That's an every Sunday morning thing. Okay. Different group goes each Sunday. Fantastic. In this case, there's things you can do, right? Let's say there's you do just leading up to your disciple project, right? Because at the end of every month, it's designed to where the students say, here's the outreaches we want. So there's going to be 3 weeks of going out and 1 night of outreach. So if you're saying, look, we're going to do a dodgeball tournament, okay? And that's going to be your first Wednesday night outreach. Then you have action teams that are split up that says, we're going to go visit people, right, that haven't been in a while. We're going to create a team that maybe does social media stuff that will create things if they're good at that. It's all based on what your kids are good at, right? We're going to go and actually take a dodgeball and go play somewhere, play a game of dodgeball in front of a bunch of other kids that are of this age, maybe down at the sports complex or a parking lot where kids are hanging out. And then you're going to set up dodgeball in the parking lot, invite those teenagers that are hanging out in the park to go play, and then invite them to the dodgeball tournament at the end of the month. So you're going out 3 weeks in a row. Then you have your 4th week where you do your outreach and everybody comes in. And then you go and share the gospel. And then those people that come from that, if you're doing the 3-month shift the way I did it, those people get saved. They come back the 2nd month. They come back, they get involved. You invite them to be a part. They go through 3 weeks of some classes, some like who are we, or the basics of the gospel, that kind of thing. What does it mean to follow Jesus? Those things. Then there's another outreach. After those 3 weeks, those students who come to receive Christ are then put on an action team to say, now I want you to go do what we just did for you. We went out, we found you, we brought you in, we shared the gospel, you received it. Now we want you to go do the same thing. That which you have experienced, go and do likewise. And so as far as service project goes, get back to that idea, you could have kids go down to a food pantry or start a food pantry that during that time, you could have a food pantry where you're boxing up groceries. You could do something during that hour where you're doing deliveries, right? Now, this is be great because then kids have to go out, right? They can go to places in your community or go visit people who are struggling that you know of. You would get all these names ahead of time, and then you would go visit those people with a box of groceries, or you would bring to them whatever it is they need, whatever it is that you're supplying. It could be like a food closet, not food closet, but a clothes closet as well. You could bring and say, well, there's a family you heard about on the news and said, hey, their house burned down and they don't have anything. What can we do? Well, that's good. That's the project. Then you go and visit. But the whole deal is that you get students out of the church meeting, that the church meeting is there. The Wednesday night meeting is to inspire, right? Normally, this is what it's for. It's for teaching, training, equipping in the gospel so that they will go out and do it themselves. But that's not the case most of the time. Most of the time, they're not doing it themselves because they need the group dynamic for support. So you go and do it in groups of 5 or 6 and say, hey, we're all going, this group of 5 or 6 is going to go deliver groceries. This group of 5 or 6 is going to go do that. But there's also people who are going out and as part of the team, and they're inviting people to that outreach that month because you want them to go out and go out into the highways and the hedges, right? To go out into the world, to get away from the meeting. The meeting is good, and we're trusting kids to go live life so they'll be good, Christian people, except we're creating fans of the youth ministry, not so much followers of Jesus. We want them to keep attending, but we've got to get them to that place where the excitement in regards to you can do service projects if you can do them within that 1 hour time frame, so that when everybody comes back, maybe you have about 10 or 15 minutes left to somebody can share a testimony, right? They come back from the 70 disciples going out, sharing the testimony about the power that they had seen, and they came back and they shared that. So now everybody in your youth group's hearing stories again. Here's my story of delivering this. Here's my story of visiting this kid. Here's my story of going to these homes and praying for the elderly in our church. Here's my story. And then now it's not just theology. It's not just academia of what you know about the gospel. It's what you're doing with what you know about the gospel. So that's the big deal there. That's where I think we is because we're asking kids to be committed. As a shift, then I think you're closing the gap between beliefs and actions and saying this is what Jesus would do. He wouldn't just be in a meeting every Wednesday. He'd be actually doing the things. And we can create that dynamic where students are able to do it together, far better for the shared experience. So any other questions at all? But John, thank you. That's a great question. And once again, this is completely adaptable, right? When you read through it, you go, oh, okay, well, we can do it this way. You don't have to do it exactly in the book. And I say in the book, you don't have to do it. You can do it as well as any way you see fit in your group. As long as you're not having a meeting and you spend 90% of your time doing the gospel, 5% setting it up, and so it's 90%. 90% doing the gospel, 5% up front, blessing them as they go out, and the last 5% of that, them coming back in and sharing the testimonies of what they saw God doing in their lives as they were doing it. So any other questions at all? Otherwise, I will leave you guys. I'd only been on here. Let's see, I'll give it about 6 more minutes. I don't want to bore you guys. I don't want to stay in here longer than is beyond the attention span of prattling on about whatever. I only want to bring what is of value to you guys. So if you have any more questions. Hey, John, my mission trip went very, very well. Went to Panama, and it went very, very well working on the video and pictures and all that stuff this week so we can show it this Sunday. And then next Sunday we'll have some testimonies and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, tremendous time. I think we did, the kids did 230 performances. So that's everything from magic tricks to little dramas to songs to dance routines. So about 230 performances of various things, and we reached about a little over 7,500 people. That's students and adults. That's downtown Panama. That's churches. That's schools. That's all those kind of things. So tremendous trip. But thank you for asking. It was a great trip, and my students did a great job. So anything else I can help you guys with, anything else I can help serve you guys with, because I want to bring value to your youth ministries. I want to be able to help you and equip you in any way I can, or just be able to pray for you. However, I can do that as well. So, if you're watching this later on, be sure you can go ahead and sign up for the webinar coming up in July. It's not active yet, the links and all that, but it's coming in July, just so you know, where I will do a deep dive into the Disciple Project, go through it. But if you want the book now, you can go to gumroad.com/youthmenresources. You can go to that, and you can download the book. It's completely downloadable. I may have a physical copy. If you're interested in having a physical copy of this, I may add an option there to do that, or I may just go ahead and make it where I will just do it. The problem is that obviously it costs then a little bit more for shipping. So if you don't mind an extra $5 for shipping, then we can make that happen. So leave your comments down below and let me know what you think about that. But if you have any questions at all about the Disciple Project, about discipleship, about all that kind of good stuff to be effective in youth ministry, I want to be able to help you and be able to do that. So, but that's it, guys. I don't see any more questions coming up, so I'm going to assume that you guys have had your fill today. And I hope you guys have a great day today. It's Wednesday night, so I have program tonight. I have a guest speaker coming in to share. She's going to do a great job. Amber Gaddis. She is going to be tremendous. And that's what we're going to do. So I hope that you guys have an equally good meeting tonight yourselves. So, John, I'm going to make it available. I did not do it initially. Just because I just want to make sure that the value is there, right? I mean, I just want to make sure that people are willing to pay the extra $5 for shipping. It's downloadable right now. I will make an option where you can buy the physical book, where you get the physical book and the PDF, and then maybe I'll make one just for the PDF. So we'll go from there. We'll figure that out. I don't mean to complicate it, but I wanted to get it up there as soon as I could. I may go ahead and change that around. So we'll see. If you're interested in the physical book, that's a great question. If you're interested in the physical book, so I would like to have a physical book, Paul. Make sure you put it up there, and I will then go buy it. Comments, let me know. All right, that's it, guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out for taking a little bit of time at 1 o'clock here. Hope you're having a great summer, and I will catch you guys next week. Got some videos coming out next week. I hope you enjoyed the videos this week on the message part 2 that I did, and then also the building a legacy in youth ministry, which I am still working on. I have not attained. I am still working on it. And I hope you are too. Hope you guys are working on your youth ministry legacy of ministering to kids and being available for God's call in your life. So, and then next week, more videos. Got a lot of things. I'll give you a sneak peek at what may be coming. Yes, that's it. That's all you're going to get. Just a little corner of that, but that's coming next week. So I'll explain more about that in next week's session. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Appreciate you guys hanging out, being a part. Don't forget, subscribe down below if you have not subscribed before. If you're brand spanking new to the community, thank you for being here. Hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get videos in your inbox. Hit the thumbs up button. That's when you like the video and you want more of them, and I will keep making them. So that's it for today, guys. I will catch you guys later. Have a good day, everybody.